If your PSA came back high at your last checkup, your doctor probably told you one of two things. Either we will monitor it and recheck in a few months, or we need to do more testing. What your doctor almost certainly did not tell you is that what you are eating right now could be actively making that number worse. That the foods in your kitchen, the ones you have been eating for years without a second thought, are directly feeding the inflammation that is swelling your prostate, elevating your PSA, and driving the symptoms that are making your life smaller every year. The weak stream, the urgency, the 3 a.m. wake-up calls, the erections that have quietly disappeared. These are not random. They are not inevitable. They are downstream consequences of a biological environment you have more control over than anyone has told you. I have been practicing urology for 5 years. And one of the most frustrating conversations I have repeatedly is with men who have been told their PSA is elevated and sent home with nothing but a follow-up appointment date. No guidance on what to eat, no guidance on what to stop eating, no explanation of what PSA actually reflects in the body and what drives it up. So that is what today is about. I am going to tell you the 4 foods that research shows most directly contribute to prostate swelling and PSA elevation. And I am going to tell you exactly what to eat instead. Real, specific, practical information you can act on today. Before I get into the 4 foods, I want to point you to something. I have put together a short video that explains the root cause mechanism behind prostate inflammation and PSA elevation in detail, why this keeps happening, why the usual advice does not work, and what the full picture looks like when you address the actual biology rather than chasing the number. I have linked it below this video. Watch it after this one, but let me give you the foundation here first. Your PSA number is not a cancer number. Most men do not know this. PSA stands for prostate-specific antigen. It is a protein produced by prostate cells, and it rises whenever the prostate is under stress. That stress can come from infection, from physical irritation, from benign enlargement, or from cancer. But in the vast majority of men with elevated PSA, the driver is inflammation. Chronic, low-grade, sustained inflammation inside the glandular tissue. And inflammation is directly fueled by what you eat. This is not a fringe theory. This is established cellular biology. Certain foods trigger inflammatory signaling cascades in the body. The prostate, because of its high metabolic activity and its dense concentration of hormone receptors, is one of the organs most sensitive to that inflammatory environment. Feed the inflammation and PSA goes up. The gland swells, symptoms worsen. Starve the inflammation, and the opposite begins to happen. Not overnight, not dramatically, but measurably, consistently, over weeks. The central molecule connecting diet to prostate health is nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is produced by your blood vessel walls and it regulates circulation to every organ in your lower body, including the prostate. When nitric oxide production is healthy, blood flows cleanly to the prostate. Oxygen in, waste out. The tissue stays clear and well regulated. When nitric oxide production is impaired, which the wrong foods do directly, pelvic circulation becomes sluggish. The prostate operates under chronic oxygen deprivation. Inflammatory signals accumulate. The gland begins to swell. And PSA rises as a reflection of that internal stress. This is the mechanism I break down in the video linked below. It connects everything I'm about to tell you and explains why food choices have such a direct and measurable impact on prostate health. Worth watching after this. Now, the 4 foods. The first food is processed red meat. Hot dogs, deli meats, sausages, bacon, canned meats, anything that has been cured, smoked, salted, or chemically preserved. The issue here is not red meat broadly, it is the preservation process. Processed meats are high in advanced glycation end products, compounds formed when protein and fat are cooked at high heat or chemically processed. These compounds directly activate NF-κB, one of the primary inflammatory signaling molecules in the human body. When NF-κB is chronically activated in prostate tissue, it drives the cell proliferation and tissue swelling that enlarges the gland and pushes PSA upward. A large prospective study following over 175,000 men found that those with the highest processed meat intake had significantly elevated risk of aggressive prostate disease compared to men who avoided it. The association was strongest for daily consumption. If you are eating deli meat sandwiches for lunch every day, a sausage with breakfast every morning, bacon on the weekends, you are feeding your prostate's inflammatory environment on a schedule. I had a patient named Alan, 63, who came to me with a PSA of 8.4. His diet was heavy in processed meat. He had a deli sandwich almost daily and bacon every weekend. We removed processed meat entirely and replaced it with fatty fish twice a week and legumes on the other days. At his 3-month recheck, his PSA had dropped to 6.1. His urologist was pleased. Alan was stunned. He had not changed anything else. The second food is refined vegetable oils. Sunflower oil, corn oil, soybean oil, cottonseed oil, canola oil in its refined form, and anything fried in these oils. These oils are extraordinarily high in omega-6 polyunsaturated fatty acids. The human body requires a balance between omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids to regulate inflammation. The historical ratio for most of human evolution was roughly 2:1. In the modern Western diet, that ratio is closer to 20:1, sometimes higher. That imbalance is not neutral. Excess omega-6, particularly from refined vegetable oils, is directly converted by the body into arachidonic acid, which is the precursor to the prostaglandins that drive tissue inflammation. In the prostate specifically, elevated prostaglandin activity is associated with both glandular enlargement and elevated PSA. Fried foods, processed snacks, most restaurant cooking, bottled salad dressings, margarine. These are all vectors for refined vegetable oil consumption that most men are not tracking. Switch to extra virgin olive oil for cold use and avoid fried foods as much as possible. The shift in your omega-6 to omega-3 ratio begins within days of changing your cooking oil. The third food is high glycemic refined carbohydrates. White bread, white rice, pasta made from refined flour, sugary breakfast cereals, pastries, crackers, most packaged snack foods. The mechanism here runs through insulin. When you eat refined carbohydrates, blood sugar spikes rapidly. Insulin surges in response. Chronically elevated insulin has two specific effects on the prostate. First, it increases the activity of insulin-like growth factor 1, IGF-1, which directly stimulates prostate cell proliferation. High IGF-1 is one of the most consistently replicated risk factors for both benign prostatic enlargement and prostate cancer in the epidemiological literature. Second, chronically elevated insulin suppresses sex hormone-binding globulin, which raises the amount of free testosterone available to be converted into DHT by 5-alpha reductase. More free testosterone means more DHT. More DHT means more hormonal pressure on the prostate to grow. Every time you eat a high glycemic meal, you are triggering a hormonal cascade that tells your prostate cells to proliferate. Do that 3 times a day for years, and the cumulative effect on PSA and prostate volume is significant. I had a patient named George, 58, with a PSA of 7.2 and significant urinary symptoms. His diet was built around bread, pasta, and cereal. He shifted to whole grains, legumes, and vegetables as his primary carbohydrate sources. At 6 months, his PSA was 5.8 and his nighttime trips had dropped from 3 to 1. George told me he had not realized how much he had been eating his way into his symptoms. The fourth food is full-fat conventional dairy. Whole milk, full-fat cheese, butter, ice cream, and cream from conventionally raised cows. The concern here is specific, and it is hormonal. Conventionally raised dairy cows are often pregnant during milking, which means their milk contains elevated concentrations of estrogens and IGF-1. These exogenous hormones survive pasteurization and are absorbed into human circulation after consumption. For the prostate, which is a hormone-sensitive tissue, regular exposure to additional exogenous estrogens and IGF-1 from dairy creates an additive hormonal load on top of the body's own production. Multiple large cohort studies, including data from the Harvard Physicians' Health Study, have found associations between high dairy consumption and elevated PSA, as well as increased rates of prostate disease. This does not mean all dairy is harmful for all men. Fermented dairy such as plain yogurt and kefir appears to have a different effect because the fermentation process alters the hormonal content and adds beneficial compounds. The concern is specifically with high volumes of full-fat conventional fluid milk and cream consumed daily. Now let me tell you about a 2023 study out of Fukushima Medical University in Japan that puts all 4 of these food categories into a unified biological framework. Researchers were mapping the cellular events that drive prostatic enlargement at the microvascular level. What they found was that chronically restricted blood flow to the prostate, driven by sustained inflammatory and metabolic stress, was the primary upstream initiator of the abnormal cell growth causing glandular enlargement and PSA elevation. Not aging in isolation, not hormones alone, it was the sustained inflammatory and circulatory environment, the precise environment that all 4 of the foods I just described are contributing to, that initiated the cellular cascade. Every processed meat meal, every refined oil, every blood sugar spike, every hormonal hit from conventional dairy is adding to that environment. Cumulatively, over years, it becomes the biological context in which your prostate is living. Change the context, and you change the trajectory. I break down that study in full in the video linked below. It reframes how most men think about what their PSA number is actually telling them. Now let me tell you what to eat instead, because removing 4 foods without a replacement plan is a setup for failure. Replace processed meat with fatty fish, salmon, mackerel, sardines, herring. 2 to 3 times per week minimum. Omega-3 fatty acids directly suppress the arachidonic acid pathway that processed meat activates. They reduce prostaglandin-driven inflammation in prostate tissue measurably and consistently. Replace refined vegetable oils with extra virgin olive oil for dressings and low-heat cooking. Olive oil is high in oleocanthal, a compound with anti-inflammatory potency comparable to ibuprofen at the doses found in 2 to 3 tablespoons daily. It also directly supports nitric oxide bioavailability in blood vessel walls. Replace refined carbohydrates with whole grains, legumes, and vegetables. Lentils, chickpeas, black beans, quinoa, oats, sweet potato. These provide sustained glucose release, keeping insulin stable and IGF-1 suppressed. Legumes additionally contain specific phytosterols that compete with DHT at the receptor level. Replace full-fat conventional dairy with fermented alternatives, plain whole milk yogurt, kefir, or hard-aged cheeses where the hormonal load has been substantially reduced through the fermentation and aging process. If you drink milk daily, consider switching to an unsweetened plant-based alternative or at minimum reducing volume significantly. I had a patient named Raymond, 67, who implemented all 4 dietary shifts over a 2-week transition period. He was not perfect. He kept his weekend bacon. He ate pasta occasionally, but he made the 4 substitutions his default rather than his exception. At his 6-month PSA recheck, his number had dropped from 9.1 to 6.8. His urinary symptoms had improved substantially. His doctor, who had been discussing biopsy, agreed to continue monitoring rather than proceed. Raymond told me, "I wish somebody had explained the food connection 2 years ago instead of just watching the number go up." That is the point. The number is not abstract. It is a reflection of what is happening inside the tissue. And what is happening inside the tissue is directly influenced by what you are eating every single day. Before you go, watch the video I have linked below. It is about 10 minutes. It explains the root cause mechanism connecting diet, inflammation, blood flow, and PSA in full detail. It is the most important thing I have put out on this channel, and it will make everything I covered today fit together clearly. Watch it when you have a few minutes to focus. I will see you there.